Adrian, I think you'd agree, Christian, one of our more thoughtful
Yeah.
and, really deep thinker guests that we've had on the podcast. I'm interested as to what were some of your takeaways.
This may be the most profound thing I have ever heard on our podcast. And I'm not being facetious.
Oh, neither am I.
When he said, we don't know what we want. We zoom through life, and if you ask people, what do you really want? They don't really know. And how important is that to bring down our anxiety levels, to help others to figure out really what we're looking for? And they're very basic emotions sometimes. I want love. I want acceptance. I want this, that, or the other. Do we really think about that?
Yeah. I thought the 3 levels of observation were really interesting. The abstract and then the level attention, the detailed focused. First is the level attention, the abstract. Second is detailed focus. You'll notice the red car or whatever. And then the third is that hyper reflection. Observe and see how people see. And I thought it was interesting because I thought, well, now he's like hyper focused on details. No, in fact, not at all. He says, I wouldn't be the guy that would remember the license plate number.
Yeah.
I'd be the guy that would be thinking about why are people doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think more about not just the stuff, but why is this happening?
Well, and as I watched some of the videos of Christian doing his work, they would go into people's homes and they'd start pulling things out of their cupboards. So why did you buy this Jell-O? Why is it up front? Why is it, and it'd be very specific. And this person would be saying, well, I'm 7th level vegan. And he'd be saying, do you know this is it? And he'd kind of start digging below and really figuring out, kind of why they were doing what they were doing. And not just what they said, but what they really did. And it was really an interesting kind of, observation technique.
Yeah, that you know more about people observing how they live and what they do as opposed to what they say, which is interesting. I thought, the business application was really interesting. Look, I've hired thousands of people, and I'm looking for people that are present. That really do focus, that you feel like you're talking to them. They're not distracted by their phones or the weather or whatever. That idea of being present being the category that he's looking for. I thought that was great advice.
And also in the business sense, he was talking about, look, it's connecting with who uses your product in a way.
Right.
So, for example, if we're selling a car, how connected I am with the person who's driving that car. And I remember one of the stories we used in Anxiety at Work, the book, was the story of the woman making she's in the manufacturing plant. She's very smart, getting bored. And eventually became a professor at INSEAD, and so the manager comes up to her and says, Susan, you're so smart. I want you to run this machine because it makes the red lights that are used, on the stoplights and the semaphores, and this is really important because if you don't do this right, people could die. And he really appealed to her ego and made it a very important. He took it down to the consumer level.
Right.
Are we developing that kind of empathy with our customers?
Right. Not just, I loved his example of homelessness, that if you deal with it in the abstract, it's numbers and it's issues. Go talk to some homeless people. Try to figure out what it's like to not know where you're going to sleep tonight. Particularly on a cold night or even a hot night. We're in the middle of this big heat wave right now. Empathy overcomes judgment, and judgment underlies observations. If you've got judgments, you won't see the same way. You won't observe the same way. Really interesting to connect those dots. I feel like I'm in a real deep thinking sort of moment after talking to Christian.
But I think this is good, as and why? How do we bring this back to Anxiety at Work?
Right.
Is the idea is the deeper we look at things, the more we're going to understand ourselves and others around us. That's going to be helpful because sometimes we go, I'm mad, I'm anxious, I'm jealous. We think these emotions on the surface, and as you and I do executive coaching, I'll often dig down with that executive and say, okay, you're mad. Why? Okay, now why? Now why? And you'll ask why several times until you finally get on to below, and they say, you know what the real issue is? I want to work on a project and see it through to conclusion. conclusion and I feel like I'm being bumped out at this or whatever it is. You've got to get to that root cause, and you only do that through observing. So a powerful message today.
Yeah. Wasn't it interesting, too? You know, how often have we got a new author on that recommends you read this book before you read mine?
Yeah.
Have you and I ever said that about any
Never,
book we've
yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
you know, this idea of observing a peregrine falcon for 10 years? I would be hard-pressed to watch a falcon for 10 minutes, you know. Really interesting. Well, Christian, what a delightful guest. And again, his book, and I want to make sure I get the title right here, is from Penguin Random House. It's Look, How to Pay Attention in a Distracted World. By the way, he spells his name, he's Danish, and so even though it's Mesbier, it's spelled Madsbjerg. So don't try to sound it out. That won't help you.
No, not even close. Yeah.
A book you should definitely put on your list to read about being more observant. Well, Adrian, as always, a delight to spend time with you. And for the many people that have tuned in to our podcast, you know, you could be doing a million things right now, and you chose to listen to our podcast, and we're very grateful for that.
We are. And thanks to our producer, Brent Klein, to Christy Lawrence, who helps us find amazing guests like Christian, and to all of you who listened in. Please like the podcast, download it, share it. We'd also love you to visit thecultureworks.com. That's thecultureworks.com. You get free resources there, including the first chapter of that best-selling book, Anxiety at Work, Jess.
Yeah, and we love to speak to audiences around the world, whether it's in person, which is always great fun, or virtual. If you've got a global audience you'd like us to talk to, we talk on topics like culture, teamwork, resilience, and gratitude in the workplace. Give us a call. We'd love to speak to your event. Well, another wonderful time to spend with some really deep thinkers and my dear friend Adrian Gostek. Thanks so much for your time. And as always, Adrian, I'll give you the last word.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Until next time, we wish you the best of mental health.